I think I understand what you're saying, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but how can this possibly compete with the globalist agenda of world takeover?
It's a fair question, but look at the reality. There are many who have protested this enslavement. Throughout history, there have been people that have come to this realization through various means, and they alerted people to this deception. They may call it a conspiracy, without really understanding the depth of this deception, or its ultimate plan, but in whatever way they know of this, and at whatever level, they all experience fear. The fear is that we're powerless to stop them. The capstone of the elite have been planning this for more than 11,000 years, before Human 2.0 even existed. The plot was devised. They have powerful interdimensional beings that know humanity on an intimate level, because they literally created the human being, and they can program humanity with such granularity as to define our life paths down to our day-to-day choices. How can one possibly defeat such an antagonist? They have the money, they have the politicians in their pockets, they have the defense and protection, they have the powerful relationships everywhere in the world, and they have the most powerful technology, in terms of surveillance and weapons. Their innermost circle is impenetrable. We can be wide awake and aware of what's happening, but awareness doesn't suddenly, in itself, change the chessboard. They taunt us to protest. Wave your signs, publish your websites, fling your fists to the sky, investigate all you want, it won't change a thing. They will tell us to our faces that their power is inexhaustible. This is how they think. They want us to feel this futility and have this overriding sense that the endgame is unavoidable. They want us to believe that we are powerless. Remember, they are securing the world and its populations for the return of Anu. That is their program, and while only the capstone of the elite understands this plan, it is enough, because the downstream operatives are loyal, programmed entities. All one needs to do is to watch Madeleine Albright in that 60 Minutes interview, and you will understand how they have been programmed to think.
I don't think I saw that. What did she do?
About a year and a half ago, Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes asked the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Madeleine Albright, if the death of 500,000 children was worth the price to essentially punish Saddam Hussein. Albright responded that it was. You see, this is the enemy that holds power. If they can justify killing children, they can't do anything. The wing makers have written that it isn't the protests that will change this enemy. If we shout at them and practice resistance with our guns in the street, they will only squash us. To bring their objective to a halt, we need to push down the wall, and we can do this by being practitioners of the sovereign integral process or anything similar. If human beings become self-aware, deprogrammed entities, who understand specifically how we have been enslaved and for what reason, we can collectively push down the wall that separates us from our true selves. This creates a chain reaction that affects everyone, including the capstone of the elite. The wall falls for them, too. It's using the consciousness of the life essence to reveal the human 2.0 consciousness is an invented reality. It's swinging from the hologram of deception to the reality that all life exists infinitely, as equals in oneness.
Okay, but how do we know that we'll be successful against them?
We don't, other than what I said before, that the wing makers are humans who have time travel to share this sovereign integral framework. I realize this sounds like science fiction meets David and Goliath. I can appreciate that, but I'm explaining what I know as directly and honestly as I can describe it. If anyone hears this interview, assuming it's released sometime in the future, then you can decide for yourself if what I say stands up to your scrutiny. I would just caution some to consider the possibility that should you dismiss it, your reaction could be a programmed response. It is your consciousness framework that is sensing and responding. Consider this before you dismiss this information as fiction.
But how would a person know this? I find myself doubting this disclosure. I don't find it very plausible. As a journalist, I'm trained to be suspicious of sources, and as much information as you've shared with me, I find myself wondering how this is possible, and I haven't heard about it.
The hierarchy practices deception by controlling the buttons on the machine of absolute power. This machine is.
But you yourself said the internet was not something that they wanted to get out.
True, but whatever technology is released, they will find a way to use it to their advantage. It doesn't matter what the technology is, they will find a way to subvert it, modify it, and use it for their agenda. These are extremely bright beings that are obsessed with the centralization of power and control, so that Anu can insert himself without resistance.
What if enough people woke up and rebelled? Couldn't we start a revolution and overthrow these crazy criminals?
They are not crazy. They are deceptive intelligences who have lost all sense of connection to their true selves. In many ways, they are the ones who are lost, and because they are so lost, they have led the unsuspecting to their haze of obedience. We have followed them. That's our responsibility. The material is here, in this interview, to wake up. But it's one thing to wake up, and it's another thing to know what to do about it. You mentioned a revolution. According to the wingmakers, it would be a waste of life. They are not going to relinquish what they have worked so hard and long to produce. This will only change when the wall is pushed down. The wall is the human 2.0 consciousness framework that is programmed within every human being. The wall needs to be pushed down, and the way this occurs is not through protest, storming the gates, or shaking our collective fists in their face. It must be done through individual self-realization, and this, because of our programming, requires us to follow a process that enables us to become self-realized of our life essence. If we remain in separation, we can't solve the problem of separation. If we remain in deception, we can't reveal anything of our true nature. So we need to see all as one and equal in this hologram of deception, and that includes the capstone of the elite, as much as the poor and hungry.
I don't see how people will be able to do that. Maybe I'm a pessimist. I don't know, but will enough people really be able to do this?
At the heart of this whole situation is a single reality, and that reality, as hard as it may be to touch, is that we are infinite beings. Everything that is of space-time is within the hologram of deception. Everything. Which reality do you believe is more powerful and lasting?
Whatever is infinite.
Don't believe the programming that you are powerless. The sovereign integral process demonstrates that you are not merely a programmed life existence.
I feel I could go on with this conversation for another couple hours, but I also sense you're trying to close it up. How are you doing on time?
I can go a little longer if you have more questions.
I have lots of questions. How about if we take a short break and I'll take that time to review my notes, and then I'll try and keep my next set of questions to another 15 minutes or so. How does that sound?
Sure, that's fine.
Great. Then we'll begin in 10 minutes. The tape is rolling again, and I've got my questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, good. Does it seem like a strange coincidence that the Labyrinth group was trying to create time travel technology, and you stumbled upon the wingmakers who are time travelers?
Not entirely.
But how do you really know that they're not aliens or some other non-human beings?
Sometimes you just have to take things at face value, when there's no evidence to the contrary, and no evidence that would support any reason for them to misrepresent themselves.
Through all of my discussions with you, this interview is like someone coming into my home and rearranging all the furniture. What advice do you have for anyone who reads this and gets a little paranoid or uneasy about this information, and what should they do about it?
This disclosure is not meant to frighten anyone or make them paranoid. It's meant to support them in their own awakening as infinite beings. That's really it. That's the information's purpose. This includes all of the Wingmaker's information in whatever form it's in. There's a core stability inside you that's been sidelined in favor of a manufactured or programmed response to life. You are programmed to fear, because then you will abdicate your liberties to your saviors. And who do you suppose your saviors will be? Who is it that makes Saddam Hussein out to be a monster, while they kill hundreds of thousands of children to prove their power is moral? The entities behind that power are the ones who will step forward and claim to save you. How they will do this is an unknown, but I have no doubt they will do it. And every time they do it, the corrals grow in number, and the populations inside the corrals swell in size. The fences get higher. Those who remain outside the corrals will think they have insight or special information that allows them to remain independent or free, but they're still operating inside their human 2.0 interface. The only real question, as I see it, has two parts. One, do I serve truth or deception? And two, how do I best serve truth? If you feel that the best way to serve truth is to protest, resist, build awareness about what is happening in the world, then do that, but I would recommend doing it from a non-polarity perspective. You can't fight separation with more separation. It will only polarize. It's important to feel that you are standing up, not in fear, or some other programmed emotion, but that you are aligned to your life essence, and an expression of that source within you, even when you protest. Others may prefer to undergo the sovereign integral process and focus on this more internal stratagem. There is no formula here, and certainly you can do both. But to know this information and then remain passive, a pure observer, is a programmed response, and that is not an answer to, how do I best serve truth? It is a denial of truth.
You mentioned earlier that the Anunnaki lent their DNA to the human 2.0. It suggests then that their DNA would be present in a lot of us. Is that the case?
This is a very complicated subject. Yes, according to the wing makers, the Anunnaki, in an attempt to enhance human DNA, conducted what we would call today in vitro fertilization experiments with human women. They wanted their DNA to create a subspecies that could endure generationally to produce loyalists. The Syrians did the same thing. In terms of DNA tendencies, the Anunnaki were conquerors, and the Syrian progeny were colonists. That's being very general, admittedly, but in broad terms that was the nature of their bloodlines, when compared to their human counterparts. The DNA template for human 2.0 was Anunnaki, but it had been altered. This is where the subject gets complicated. The Anunnaki are not physical beings. They did not exist in three-dimensional density as we know it today. The Earth, 500,000 years ago, was a very different place in terms of its density and the gravitational fields that bathed it. The Anunnaki were interdimensional beings, meaning they are infinite just as we are, but without the physical body. However, all beings possess DNA. It's the quantum equivalent of a blueprint. So they experimented with how to use their DNA to create physical beings that could function in accordance to their agenda, which as I said, was initially mining gold, but later turned to the enslavement of a species who would worship Anu. When the Anunnaki fertilized human women, it was with royal bloodlines, and this was not a coincidence. They wanted these royal bloodlines to sustain over thousands of generations so they could more easily facilitate their master plans on Earth.
Was this a nationalistic thing?
How do you mean that?
Were Anunnaki bloodlines mostly Arab, Jewish, or Gentile? Were there certain characteristics that were noticeable in the physical body?
The Anunnaki bloodlines were initially Babylonian and Egyptian, but they have spread into nearly all races. It probably wouldn't be an overstatement to say that nearly every person on the planet today has some fractional percentage of Anunnaki royal DNA.
What were they, in terms of their look? I assume they look like us.
Yes. It was Atlantean, Anunnaki and Syrian body styles that were effectively blended to create the human 1.0 prototype. All of these beings, though less dense, looked similar to a human form. Races did not intermingle, as they were very cautious not to intermix their DNA, because they were uncertain of the effect and how it might pollute or mutate through their genetics. But remember, the human physical body was an experiment, and they literally looked at it as physical protection, just like we would look at a spacesuit. None of these races lived in the density of Earth, or an Earth-like planet. They didn't realize how Earth would interact with their creation and cause it to evolve in directions that they couldn't control or predict. Earth, as I previously said, was like a random variable, imposing itself on the human body through its gravitational fields. The interbreeding between Anunnaki and human women took place around 6000 BCE, and it was a designed event, not some lustful dalliance with the daughters of men, as it is sometimes portrayed in Sumerian texts. This was part of a design to place a subspecies within the human race that would conquer and control the Earth's resources. It was to consolidate and centralize resources for Anu, and to ensure that the world's wealth could be placed into his waiting hands when he returned.
The whole thing about LERM, light-encoded reality matrix, and how the Labyrinth group had seen it as God. I don't understand that if 15 had read the same information as you, how he wouldn't have come to the same conclusions as you. I know you mentioned that you had additional contacts with the Wingmakers, and this convinced you of the authenticity of the information. But why do you think 15 clung to his perspective?
You can look at LERM as the connection between the Earth plane and the non-physical planes of the hologram that Anu constructed inside our functional implants. LERM was the connective web, and it was bidirectional, meaning that Anu could be projected into any being's consciousness framework to be seen or heard, and it also meant that Anu could detect and view into the life of an individual being. LERM is known as the White Light, and the Great White Brotherhood is known as its guardians. They appropriated Jesus and Buddha as their foundational pillars, stole the concept of I Am, matched these elements with the white light that had been a factor in every religious, occult, and esoteric doctrine throughout time, and announced in the 1950s that the Great White Brotherhood was a real organization. Soon after that, ascended masters began to join the swelling ranks, as human channelers began to be the spokespeople of these entities. From the Waymaker's perspective, these entities are fixtures of the polarity plan to keep human beings firmly anchored in separation, distraction, and deception.
What does this have to do with 15's decision?
Sorry, I got a little sidetracked. 15 knew of the Great White Brotherhood. It's considered a very important element in the